Welcome to another episode of Don't VLOOKUP, where we talk to operators from data-driven companies and understand how they use data to drive growth. We're super lucky to have Audrey here today. She's the head of marketing for Woobles. And instead of giving her an intro, I'd love for her to actually introduce herself. Audrey, I'd love to just get to know who you are and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. I actually started my career as a management consultant, so has probably the furthest away from marketing at a crochet kit company. But the link is coming up. So I did about 4 years of consulting, then like any other consultant, went into business school. And did 2 years of business school. I've always been fascinated about both fashion and customer experience, anything that touches the customer. So, naturally, like anyone who goes to business school landed in a fashion job. Uh, in my class, I think like maybe 5 out of, I don't know, 800 something people actually ended up working in fashion. So not a conventional route, but I ended up at a fashion company, did marketing there for a couple of years. What I've realized is I am someone who, do not really like to follow traditions. I don't like to follow conventions. I like to break my own records. I like to be very autonomous, make decisions. And obviously, the best place for that is somewhere small, somewhere that is small but growing fast. And the Woobos was exactly where I needed to be. So I joined the Woobos at the end of 2022. So it's been a little over a year, but our brand is only around for 3.5 years. So I feel like I feel like I've worked for 10 years just over the past, 13 months of being here. It's very exciting. And I'm sure we'll get into a lot of the data aspects later on.
Yeah, and it's really, I feel like it'd be really interesting to hear your path even to understand how you got to the Woobles. I feel like there's a connection where there's, let's say, finance people like myself, and then there's management consultants, and it's kind of the untraditional route to go into the startup world. So what do you say to those people that kind of just maybe want to break out of, let's say, the traditional route of finance and management consulting into this kind of startup environment? Like, how did you even go about that search in the first place? I know you started in the fashion world, but how do you find the opportunity you're at today?
Yeah. Um, I would say for me, I don't think of my career as, ways to make a living. I think of my career, if I'm spending, 8 to up to whatever 16 hours a day working, then I want this to be a meaningful part of my life. So I think for people who are not satisfied with where they are, there could be finance and consultants who are very happy where they are, but if you're not satisfied with where you are, then like really ask yourself, what is it that will give you that happiness, that fulfillment? And for me, it was not as much, oh, I have to work in XYZ industry anymore. It was more so, I would love to have the authority and put my ideas into action without going through layers of approvals and facing facing difficulties that are just completely out of my control. So naturally, I started looking into the startups of the world, and this opportunity came up. Um, like many other opportunities, I think it was the case of the opportunity came up. It was a good timing. I was ready for it. So I just jumped ahead and took it because I think I basically forego the opportunity of going back to consulting after business school, knowing that I would be giving up the tuition reimbursement. That was when we had I think a lot of consulting companies do. When I made that decision, I've already told myself, I would rather suffer the short-term financial loss, but if it is working towards something that I am intrinsically passionate about, if it is doing something that gets me excited to get up every day to do instead of dreading, oh, I can't wait for the weekend, then everything is worth it.
Well, you seem
Yeah.
excited, so that's good. The passion shows through, and also as a former one in your track, I agree. I mean, there's a lot to like about this. Definitely a lot of shocks as well from the different environments of, kind of the standard, hey, you know what you're about to do, and you just have to go tackle it, versus kind of just having that autonomy to do what you need to get anything done. So, really interesting.
Yeah, speaking to meaningful work, I know just from speaking to you earlier, one of the things that we had talked about is it seems like in the industry, a lot of flex kind of comes from number of employees versus I think what we had kind of joked about is like revenue per employee. And I know that you run a super lean team. We don't have to share numbers, but you guys are a super lean and efficient team. And I definitely respect you and look up to you for that. And I'd love to maybe dive into how do you go about doing that? Like, what are some of the mindsets, or even if you're willing to share, like some of the traits that you look for when hiring, and how you're running such a lean and mean team.
Yeah, and I think I can speak it on behalf of marketing as well as other parts of the business. To your point, yes, we are very lean, and we will probably always be hiring fewer people than companies of similar size are supposed to hire, quote unquote. The philosophy that, really the co-founders did a really great job kind of when they're looking for the talent and building the team culture. The number one thing when we say about the team culture is no ego. There's no ego at the Woogles. And I think that's such a huge part of being on a lean team is we're all equals. A good idea is a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter the hierarchy. It doesn't matter which part of the business you are supposed to be working at. So that's number one, making sure that we first and foremost find people who don't flex, find people who find the most joy in coming up and executing the best ideas. And secondly, it is always a long search to find that one additional team member because we want the best of the best in the field. If we're hiring someone, you've got to have proven record that you're the best at what you do, and therefore you join the team not to listen to XYZ. No matter who you technically report to, we lean on everybody's expertise in their respective field. So I think those two combined have luckily enabled us to run on a relatively lean team.
And we're definitely going to get to the more operations point, but maybe just double clicking on that. It seems like there's a balance of maybe the data that you're collecting on some of these candidates or potential people and kind of more the empathy, kind of the hustle kind of factor. How do you balance those as you kind of look at, let's say, the resume or look at anything else that might be like a little more quantitative in nature? What does that look like for your recruiting cycle?
Yeah, it depends on the role, but we have first of all revamped the way how we write our job descriptions. Like you go onto the Google's job page, click on any job description. We talk about who we are first because we think it's important for people to, well, in as little time as possible, understanding what we stand for, why you should join a learn to crochet company as a possibly very data-driven, strategic, analytical person. And we also talk about who you are. Are you this type of person who has no ego, who is so driven, who can operate very autonomously, who is not afraid to speak up when you see something that needs improvement, is someone who never says good enough to most things. You always want to break your own record. So from the way we write job description, we try to weed out people who want to come here just to, earn a salary. I think that you need to be intrinsically so driven and passionate about what we do, because we're also a brand that's, joyful, fun, adventurous. we want the Wubos culture to be not only that, facing the customers, but also internally as well. And so when I look at someone's resume or their experience, yes, the past, the data of, where they worked at in the past, how many jobs they had, what was the numerical impact they had in their past positions, those are important. But a lot of times we also ask people to just record a Loom video in the job application process. We want to hear from you. What is it that made you the most proud? And how you approach a problem depending on the role that we're hiring. And we also go through, I would say, quite rigorous for a startup hiring process. We usually, there is some sort of exercise that we ask the candidates to do to really almost mimic that work scenario for you. And you talk to probably more people than you think you would, but that's, again, also to just make sure that we're hiring the woobliest people to join the Woobos team.
It sounds like your consulting background coming through a little bit there.
Framework and putting that into use for sure.
I love it. Yeah, I think I know you guys are also hiring. We'll make sure you get to plug that at the end of the episode. But for anyone listening, you just kind of got a playbook into how to potentially work with Audrey here. So yeah, I love that you shared that. Just maybe a curveball question for you. I'm just curious, what's the coolest thing that you've ever crocheted? And did you crochet what you're wearing right now?
I did not. Funny story. When we were hiring our the content and social media person, I was wearing I think I was wearing the same sweater, and she was also like, "Oh, I thought you're really good at crochet. Like, so intimidating. You're wearing this green sweater." But truth be told, I learned to crochet with the Woobos as well. I also never thought I would be a crafter. I was never someone who likes to do like hands-on projects, but somehow I managed to have obviously a whole collection of the Woobos. And last Christmas, I hung all of my Woobos on my Christmas tree. So I basically had a Woobos Christmas tree. But I also, because I've learned all these techniques, I've made myself a couple of like bags with our easy peasy yarn, which I thought was fun. It's not helpful for my carpal tunnel by any means, but I am genuinely, I'm not saying this because I do marketing here, but I genuinely Woobo every day or every other day if my wrist can handle it, because it's just so great for just taking my mind off of work. I don't, when I Woobo, I don't look at these and think of it as, oh yeah, I work here. I look at these and I just genuinely enjoy the process of doing it. I already forgot what your question was.
Yeah, it was what did you actually crochet? Like, what's the coolest thing, most exotic thing that you crocheted outside of your sweater?
Yeah, so I didn't crochet the sweater, but I did crochet a
I
couple
believe you did.
and a bunch of, I think at this point, maybe like, I don't know, 40, 50 Woobos. So
Wow.
it's addictive.
What's the so it's pretty getting about now to the data side of things. You even said 50 woobles, this and that. Like, how are you looking at your customers in that way from an engagement standpoint? Like, what are some of the tactics you're saying? Is it the quantity? Is it the number of orders? Like, how data driven are you getting, understanding those customers and their kind of engagement habits?
Yeah. I think of it as really twofold. It's acquisition, it's a retention, right? When it comes to customer strategy. On acquisition front, the goal is to, get someone who hasn't heard of the Woobos, maybe is aware, but has never considered the Woobos. Get as many people to try experience the Woobos as possible. And that we do it mainly on paid social ads. So, obviously data plays a huge role in, for example, when we advertise on Meta or on TikTok. Within platform, we can see the campaign data and compare when we're doing testing, where should we double down on, how should we come up with new ideas, then throw those into testing. but also, using attribution tools like we've used Northbeam before, we've used Triple Whale as well, really just to understand the impact of each channel that has on acquiring a new customer. And doesn't stop here. I think it's important for most of the startups, obviously, to focus on the acquisition strategy. But once we've gained a sizable customer base, the retention piece is equally as important. So for that, it's mainly your typical channels like email, SMS. We also run Facebook Messenger campaigns. And within that, it's a lot of A/B testing. It is always be improving the metrics. What can I do to, improve open rate, click rate, conversion? And also thinking about it from the customer perspective, for those who are, let's say, subscribed to these, to email and SMS, how do we make them convert, and how do we make them come back and buy again? It's a lot of hypothesizing and A/B testing, synthesizing learnings, and keep going iterations.
So you just mentioned a bunch of tools, a bunch of techniques, acquisition, retention. How do you balance all of that, from like a focus strategy? Are there, a type of thing where you're looking at certain metrics, kind of like key North Star metrics to kind of identify what the trends look like? Or is there kind of a cadence cycle that you're saying, let's test this certain acquisition strategies, retention strategies? Like how tactical do you get when you're actually going through those motions? And given also it's a lean team, who's kind of helping to perform all this, with you?
Yeah. To answer your second question, because it's a quicker answer, we have a very lean full-time team, but luckily we also work with contractors. And I think that's another little hack. Maybe a lot of people already know, but find the expert. If you can't hire the expert, if you can't hire or can't afford to hire the experts in-house, then contract them so that you are still getting the expertise in the field. I think especially in the paid media, retention, we also use an agency as well. Just really helpful as we scale. We just don't know what the level of work that is required. So it's easier to scale with, the contractor help in that sense. And then when I think about the metrics, the really overall metric, this also depends on the nature of the business. But for us, we sell physical goods paired with digital learning experience. So we want to keep healthy margin. And so the overarching metric I'm always looking at is the MER. It's, what is the percentage of your marketing spend as percentage of your total revenue, just to make sure that whatever we're doing, however we're allocating within the marketing spend, it's not eating into the profitability of the business. And then within that, definitely different ball game in terms of acquisition versus retention. Acquisition requires a lot of investment. Just using Meta as an example, how do we know if we should keep spending money within Meta? Put together a bunch of creatives, put those into test at a smaller amount, see which ones start picking up in terms of metrics, and then see if you can scale them in, like, say, a scaling campaign, and just kind of keep going and iterate from there. And I think another piece that's really critical is I don't think of these marketing channels as isolated channels, because they're all technically threaded by the customer, whether it's the prospect or existing customer. So understanding the customers, understanding why they're interested in the Woobos, why they buy, why they come back and buy, is going to be the crucial data that feeds into all these channels to help us coming up with, testing ideas and get learnings from there.
Yeah. You touched a little bit on attribution in when we first started talking about data. I know attribution's a really hairy subject, especially in a post iOS 14, post iOS 17 world. How are you guys thinking about that internally, especially as you your media mix, starts to diversify, and I'm sure you guys are testing new channels as well.
Yeah, I think especially as the media mix starts to diversify, it is at some point it is almost not necessary to just be pigeonholed into, I want to know exactly how much revenue it does this XYZ channel bring into the business. I'm looking at the mix as a whole. I'm looking at MER as a whole. And if I want to optimize, it's a matter of I need to optimize within each platform to see if they can, all together work better. So how do I optimize within each platform? And you compare the data within the platform. The more important thing is look at the relative data, because the absolute data across platform doesn't really give you that much actionable insights. If I want to see if a certain creative works on Facebook, I throw it into a Facebook campaign creative test, and then I look at the comparative data so that on an everyday basis, you're always optimizing within each platform how you do. And then, at irregular cadence, look at the overall impact, making sure in our case, MER is under control. And if the business continues to grow, that means great, just keep optimizing within each channel.
And it seems like, we talked to a lot of operators. Meta still has kind of been the kingpin, no matter how you see it when you're scaling. But there's a lot of experimentation happening. We just talked to Jon Snow about, for instance, TikTok Shops, which has been, kind of on the rise, a lot of conversation. I'm pretty sure that you did a lot on TikTok, or I've seen a case study already, with the Woobles. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about what opportunities you do see there, or even challenges that you might see in scaling TikTok and TikTok Shops specifically with the brand.
I'll start with the challenge. TikTok advertising is hit or miss. I don't think it's a secret to anyone. I think anyone who's done advertising on TikTok, they would know. Sometimes something just randomly hit, and sometimes you just couldn't scale. Then when I take a step back and think further on, intrinsically, how is TikTok different from your Facebook, your Instagrams of the world? The audience the audience itself is so different in that, well, their attention span is going to be, a split second. So what does that mean? Your ads that you put on your Instagram, Facebook, it just will not translate to TikTok, because by the time you get into what your brand name is, they already clicked out. So then when you think about how to build a TikTok presence, at least what's been working for us is we started from the organic side, because we want people to love the brand, love the identity of the brand, love the content. People go onto TikTok to find entertainment, to, kill time, find things that catch their eye. So how can we honing on delivering content that gives people that, while also, representing the brand. And luckily, I think our brand's identity of, being fun and friendly and adventurous, jive very well with what people want to see on TikTok. So we have, scaled up and down in TikTok advertising, but what hasn't changed is we have always been active on TikTok, and we were able to grow a sizable following through there. I will be honest, I don't think we have cracked the code in terms of TikTok advertising. Still a learning process, but what will not change is focusing on the content that's native to the platform.
What have you been seeing with shops, even specifically? Like, have you, been putting your products in shops? Has it been be able to capture kind of that organic demand that you're seeing, or how's the early days with shops going?
Yeah, shops is another challenge for us. More so on the technical side, just sometimes our products aren't synced in shops, but when they do, we do see really interesting results. For example, when we launched a mystery donut kit just a few weeks ago, it quickly became like one of the most sold items on TikTok Shop. I think that also, gives us insight into people really want interesting things. They don't want to say buy a crochet kit for the penguin where they know what the penguin will turn out to be. They want to buy something that's a little mysterious and they may not know what the donut's color and, topping and all of that. So that was a really interesting learning just to you can see how the data is different on TikTok Shop versus the regular Shopify data. Now, granted, the TikTok Shop's sample size is much smaller, but it's another way for us to really understand what the audience there is looking for.
Yeah. Speaking of understanding your audience, I know you've previously talked about the quarterly post-purchase survey reviews that you guys do and maybe some of the learnings that you've taken from that. Can you maybe chat through that for a second?
Yeah. So luckily we have the great tool of No to give us a lot of actually really sizable sample size of post-purchase data. So the way I'll start with how we set up the post-purchase surveys. I think a lot of people think about a survey as, okay, let me just ask questions that would be interesting to know the results of. No. You want to ask questions where you can take an action based on the data of the question. So let's say if I ask the question of how do you like the rubles? Give you a choice of I like it versus I don't like it. Sure, it's an interesting question to know, but what are you going to do with the data? So when we designed the questionnaire for post-purchase service, we were super intentional so that every single question that we included in the post-purchase survey, we can analyze the data and have actions tied to it. And I think that's probably the most valuable part of the quarterly post-purchase survey analysis is you will see the charts, you will see the data and the interesting, trends and insights. But what you will also most importantly see is I will be assigning action items to the different owners so that we can truly take action based on the data we see. And one interesting example that came to mind where we were able to, really use data to make a difference. When last year we weren't launching that many licensed launches. A licensed launch basically means we work with a well-known brand. So, for example, Warner Brothers and Harry Potter, and launch a product in collaboration with them. When we weren't launching a lot of really noticeable licensed products, we were just curious: are people coming here to buy these licensed products because they like the license or because they are already Wooblers and they're interested in, the new things that we came out with? And the intended action is if we can prove that people come to the Woobles and discover the licensors, discover new brands that we collaborate with, that we have almost that media power of, sharing the awareness for those brands. So I just simply added a question in the post-purchase survey. And shockingly, for one of the license launches that we did last year, more than half of the people who bought the kits from that launch did not know about that licensor at all. So we were able to use data to prove to other brands, hey, look, if we work together, this is the brand power we currently have. We can introduce you to our audience. And I think that's just such a simple way, but super effective, rather than, let's say, telling a brand, look, we have, great social media following, or look, we're doing all these things in marketing, but just give them that statistic and people will immediately understand the power of the brand.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, I like how you and the team are positioning basically the data for basically growth with commercial partnerships, which is not something we've heard, I think, before from anyone so far. But back in even the beverage days, that's what we did with direct to consumer data. We'd bring it to the retailers and say, look at our social media presence, look at our like D2C performance and retention rates, the same thing should happen in store for your retention rates, which would really help. I mean, maybe on that point, and you don't have to give exact numbers, of course, but what kind of relative like amount or percentage or just general strategy do you have for commercial partnerships like those with other brands as well?
Yeah, they really help scaling the brand in the sense of opening up the Wubos to new audiences. So when we think about a licensor, let's say, a Pac-Man, we're tapping into their fandom who might not have heard of the Wubos before, but people get to know the Wubos because they see a Pac-Man crochet kit. Oh, that's interesting. Then the next question they'll ask is, oh, crochet. Oh, who makes this? The Wubos. Okay, interesting. I'm gonna go on the website and see, what else they have. So when I think about these licensed launches, they are just a great way for us to, present ourselves in a very authentic way to these new audiences. And obviously, the step two, which is very important, is then to make these people get hooked on the Woogles as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Audrey. I know we're kind of bumping up against time here. I do want to give you the last little bit here to maybe plug yourself. So if people can follow you on any socials, I know you're also hiring for your small and mighty team. So if anyone listening is of interest, I'd love to have you maybe present that position as well.
Sure. If anyone is interested in learning more, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just my full name, Audrey, and last name CAO. Or if you want to email me, it's audrey@thewoobos.com. In terms of the talent we're looking for, like I mentioned at the beginning, we want the best of the best. So if you think you're the best at what you do, I think we will keep talking. But specifically, looking for someone who is great at creative strategy, more so on the paid social side, and then just marketing talent in general is appreciated. Someone who understands retention well would be amazing to connect with too. But for the specific job postings, you can go to thewoobos.com and just search jobs, or if you scroll down on our website, there is a jobs link where all of the JDs are included there.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, if anyone's interested, you know how to connect to Audrey. I definitely learned a ton from you, especially on even the post-purchase survey stuff. To be clear, this isn't a paid promotion for No. So thanks for mentioning No. And we'd love to have you back as you guys continue to grow. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Audrey. And I'm probably going to take a test or like the little learn kit. I'm curious to see what I can do. So we'll see. Maybe next time I'll present my findings or my sweater, and you'll see.
Yes.
You'll see what happens.
My goal is to get everyone hooked on the Woobos.
I love it.
That's a good goal. Well, yeah, thank you again, Audrey, and great to catch up.
Thank you.